All right, Dan. Just want to give you a brief overview of what we got so far. The copter flies great though. I flew it one more time last night, and stabilize mode and stabilize and altitude hold modes work great. Loiter, there's a little bit of wonder. So I'm going to be flying again this afternoon and tuning it, trying to get it to stay within a meter. It's staying within a meter, then after about a minute or so, it's wandering out to as much as 2 to 3 meters from where it was set at, the position. No big deal, just a little bit of tuning. We'll get it locked in there, get a tighter hold. But when you get it, this is pretty much how you're going to be getting it. The copter's going to be folded up. I'll leave the props on it, but the landing gear will be broken down. I want to set this thing up. All I've got to do is this. 2 large nylon nuts to hold the arms in place. Just gonna line these up a little bit. I thought about putting stops right there so there would be no like guessing where to line everything up, but this works. Let's push it on through. All these parts fit really snug, which is good, but take a little time breaking it in. And get these finger tight. If you feel it pulling down, that's good. Ultimately, I want to move away from using these bolts altogether and have some type of quick release mechanism. I've already got something in the works. Just I may incorporate on the next one I build, which I've got to build another one of these for another customer. I got to start on it around the end of next week. Trying to mind the camera here, so I'm doing this a little awkwardly. Landing gear just all snaps in place. And this is training gear, okay? This is just what you're learning to fly and operate with right now. They're cheap, they can absorb the impact, and they snap right onto the existing railing system. And we're going to continue using this railing system even when you put the carbon fiber landing gear on that you're going to be using with your gimbal. All right, but I'm going to keep the battery tray here in the center when you get it, and adjust it from the inside here to balance the weight out. And the balance point is going to be right here in the center. We're going to feel where the wires are coming out from the center and the inside plate here, going up to the autopilot. There's like a hole. Kind of put your finger right about there, kind of get a good idea where the bounce, but that's the balance point roughly. All right. So until you get used to it, how it handles and flying it and comfortable with it, let's just keep it set up like this when you get it, okay? Strap your battery to the bottom. If you got a GoPro and a GoPro gimbal, you can mount it to the pylons here. I'll be including another tray, so you can do that if you want to while you're flying it, getting used to it. But again, I'm going to send you the carbon fiber legs in about another week. We're having some parts custom 3D printed for us, some joints. And we're going to start making our own carbon fiber landing gear for these things and move away from buying prefab parts. They're expensive, and a lot of times they're just not as good as some of the stuff we can make here. Show you the gimbal. Typically the gimbals that I use for the size camera you have look like this. All right, it's a pretty good size. You can put it up next to the copter. You can see it's big. So what I did was chopped it down until we got this much smaller, a better form factor. See, now I don't have the third axis on this gimbal yet. All right, Been waiting for decent controllers to come in, and I've got those controllers now. So I'll get this mounted on here this weekend, get it tested out, the third axis, and get it sent to you sometime around the end of next week, along with the landing gear. By that time, you should, well, hopefully you'll have some flights in on the training gear and stuff. You'll be comfortable enough to mount the other legs and the gimbal by then. Quickly, what I did with the canopy is this push button release. There are little hooks here, carbon fiber hooks on the canopy that have been fashioned and bolted in. This is the arming switch. I didn't have this connected from earlier. You don't have to mess with anything on the autopilot here or worry about configuring anything. When you get it, just read up on the documentation, get familiar with instructions, online instructions, and take it outside, power it up, and give it a flight. All it does is it hooks in to the front here, right between the nylon arm bolts, and just snaps into place. A little spring pin back here, so it holds it pretty secure. So this is the arming switch. I'm going to show you a quick power up. Let's make sure the transmitter, all these switches are back and up, all right? Up and back. You don't have to worry about the knobs. These are your gimbal knobs here though. That's for pitch and that's for roll. And when I fly this thing, normally I operate it like this. I'll put it in position hold, or if it's flying waypoints and I just want to man the gimbal. Sometimes I'll use, my thumb and just slowly get used to working and operating them independently from each other. Start off just one at a time and get used to working the pan. But this is the positions that's worked for me best on this transmitter. So that's the way they're set up. All right. This is the mode switches here. This when these positions are all, these switches are all up, that's stabilized mode. Flip this one down to the middle. That's altitude hold. That's loiter or GPS position and altitude hold. The aileron dual rate switch down. That's return to launch. Remember that. If you ever get in a bad situation where you can't tell the orientation, or you just lose sight of it, or you think something bad or catastrophic is about to happen when it's in another mode, all switches down. That's return to launch. It's going to come back to where you initially powered the aircraft and initialized it at. With the aileron dual rate switch down, flip this one to the middle position. I've got it set right now to land. So if you're having trouble with your landings, I've got the descent set to, I think, 35 millimeters or 35 centimeters a second. So it's going to be pretty slow. So all you've got to do, if you're flying this and you want to land it, is you're in stabilized mode flying, flip it to altitude hold over the position you want to land it at. And once you do that, get it in altitude hold, flip the aileron dual rate switch down, and that puts it into land. All right. As soon as it touches ground, throttle down, switches up. That's all you got to remember. All right. Again, when you're in land and it touches ground, what you want to do is throttle down, switches up. All right. Then disarm. Throttle to the bottom left-hand corner. That disarms the motors. I'm going to power it up real quick to show you. Again, make sure all the switches are in the default position. Turn on your transmitter. If your switches aren't in the default position, it'll tell you which switch is on and it won't go into the menu or to the main screen until you correct it. We'll power up the counter. That means it's initializing. Let's give it just a minute. Now normally when you first get these things, when you first get it, it's good to power it up either with a USB cable or either a LiPo and let it set for at least 30-45 minutes. All right. What that's doing is allowing the sensors on it to acclimate to the change in location and the change of environment, which is very important for this thing to work properly when you get it, especially if you go straight into trying autonomous features, which I don't suggest you do right off the bat. Get a couple of flights in stabilized mode, Get a couple of flights in, try an altitude hold, learn its characteristics. Get a couple of flights doing the position hold, flying around in it. Get some flights in on each mode. All right, just for your benefit, so you can get familiar with how those modes work and how they're going to react and respond. All right. All right. Now we get ready to fly this. All we got to do is hold this switch down. That's an arming switch. This thing won't fly until that's depressed, okay? And when it's the arming switch is activated, it's armed, that lead will stay red, all right? Now, once that's done, step back from the aircraft, at least 5 meters, and to arm the motors, you want to hold it, the transmitter stick down to the bottom right, all right? When you hear that tone, that means if you give it some throttle, it's going to take off. It's going to be ready to go. It's going to take off. All right. Now, before you approach the aircraft for any reason, throttle stick to the bottom left-hand corner, and that beep means the motors are armed or disarmed. I'm sorry. They went from armed to disarmed. Once you approach it, the first thing you need to do is hold down the arming switch to the autopilot. All right. And don't mess with it or do anything else with it until you see it flashing 3 times, pause, 3 times, pause. Blink, 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 pause. Blink, 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 pause. Actually, I think it's 4 blinks. But that's all you got to do to power this thing up and fly it. All right. And that's basically all I want you to do for the first week while you have it. Just get familiar with it. Here's the telemetry module. That's what's going to be communicating with the ground control station. This is a ground side USB telemetry module. I'm going to point you over here for a second. I'm going to show you. Open up the mission planner. Show you how easy it is to connect. This is the ground control station software, the mission planner. Plug the USB in, USB telemetry module. I have mine set to COM port. This is the 14. I normally set it to 4. This is on COM 14. 57,600 for the baud rate. And it's getting the parameters from the autopilot. Sometimes these transmitters can interfere if you've got it sitting directly in between them. And sometimes it takes longer than others. Now, when you connect the autopilot to the ground control station with a USB, it's literally just a second. As soon as you blink your eye, it's already connected. It doesn't have to be so close also. Okay. So now connected to the ground control station. And you notice on the HUD display here, when I pitch it and I roll it, you'll see the artificial horizon change. You'll see the altitude, the magnetic bearing, GPS, 30 fix. So that's the mode that you're in. Up here is RSSI for the telemetry, telling you your signal strength. Down here's your altitude, numerical values. I've got this set up on mine. You have to set this up when you install the software. This is the GPS HDLP that tells you how accurate the GPS is, given how many satellites it has in this fix. Right now it's accurate indoors within 1.94 meters. So it's approximating a position within 1.95 meters. That's really good for indoors. It's getting 10 satellites. All right. outside, normally what they recommend is you have a GPS HDOP value of 2.00 or less. So as long as you're getting at least 2.0, then you're good to fly and hold a position and use the autonomous features. Flight planner. This is where you can expand your map from where you're at, giving your location. That's where I'm at right now. That's pretty damn precise. But I can click on here, here, here. As many as I want. Plus as many waypoints. Well, there's a finite number, but more than you user need. So here's the waypoints. On these, there's a drop down. I can pick what I want to do at that waypoint. There's a number of features. You can check those out yourself when you get time. That's saying the GPS location, latitude, longitude of where that waypoint's at. And I can go in here and change the altitude. So it's 100 meters right now. I can change that to 1 meter. I've had these things flying 3 feet above the ground, flying waypoints. So, you can delete them, or you can write them to the autopilot. So if I hit this right button, it's going to write these waypoints to the autopilot. If I want to verify that those waypoints are on the autopilot, I then hit the read button. And when it reads those waypoints back, if it's the same, then it wrote. Works pretty well though. In the configuration window. But you don't have to worry about that right now. It's already configured for you. But you will be learning some on that as you get more familiar with it and use it more. And you want to customize it to what you want to do. So that's it for the moment.